Welcome to the City of Reading's council meeting for October 6th, 2020. I'd like to start with a pledge or a prayer and a pledge. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have the council member roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Here.
Mr. Gertz?
Here.
Mr. Lynn?
Here.
Mr. Fischescher?
Here.
Mrs. Edichico?
Here.
Unless there's any objections, both Mr. Albrink and Mr. Lindeman will be excused from this evening's meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, they are excused. I would like to introduce Josh. He'll have to say his last name, but he's from ICRC. He's our guest speaker tonight to talk about the Reading Doughboy documentary that's coming out in a couple of days. I'm going to go ahead and let Josh go from here.
Hi guys, hope you're all doing well. Yeah, we've got the Reading Doughboy documentary coming up, and I'm sure you've heard of the Doughboy at least sitting down there in your town. And this started back when we did that 100th anniversary celebration, and now it's transformed into this book, which if you haven't taken a look into, I highly recommend taking a look into it. It is one of the most fascinating books out there, probably the most fascinating book about World War I that there is. And I think when we started interviewing the Roth family, we talked to them, and I went into that interview. I thought it would take 15, 20 minutes or so. We were going to do about a 5-minute video, and I sat there and talked to them for about an hour, 20 minutes. And the more I talked to them, the more interviews we started doing, the more digging we started doing, the more I looked at that book, I realized what an extraordinary story we had in front of us, and the opportunity to capture this story on a wider scale and to have that story live on at the Reading Historical Society. And they've been a great help to us and the Roths, the whole Historical Society, Jim Lichtenberg, Alan Retberg. All of us have been working on this for a while, and we realized we had to make this a bigger story, because we're talking about, the same families that are in Reading now 100 years ago that sent people off to war. And Reading back then, I know, wasn't a very big town at all, and to send 224, I think someone told me that was near a quarter of the town off to war then. And then 100 years later, to be able to look back and to have some of those same families tell the story is truly an extraordinary opportunity for us, for the Historical Society, and for the town of Reading. So it's going to be out this Saturday. Obviously, this Saturday, a big day in Reading with the Blue Devils football game as well. So we at ICRC are going to premiere the video this Saturday at 6 p.m. and that'll be followed up with live coverage of the Reading football game. We're going to have that. The premiere will be on our website, our Facebook, our YouTube channels, and then this will also premiere on Spectrum Channel 17 and Cincinnati Bell 847. And we'll be sure to get all that information out to you guys here in the coming days. It'll be out on social media. But then that'll be followed up. That's at 6 o'clock on Saturday, and that'll be followed up on those same platforms. You can watch the Reading Blue Devils playoff game against Marymount, which will begin with our pregame show at 6:55, kickoff at 7. So big night for Blue Devils out there, and I hope everyone enjoys it. The response to the trailer, I gotta thank everyone that's shared that, and just the response from Reading and the town and the community, it means a great deal to me to see that kind of response, and it means a lot to us here at ICRC.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that Bruce Swenson was supposed to be here tonight to also talk about this. I guess he was very instrumental also, but he had another an emergency up in Columbus that he had to go to. So thank you very much, Josh, for that introduction. Do you want to go ahead and show the video, the trailer?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Keith had that trailer. Or...
Yeah,
Yep,
Keith
I've got-
has
yep,
it.
I've
He's
got it.
queued it up.
Place to us. You know, Reading was built by and continues to be built by God-loving, country-loving, family-loving, patriotic, hardworking Americans. And, you know, our veterans are everything to us. The fact that as a community, if you look back when the
started, and I can't imagine Reading could have been that large of a community, and to send 224 of their young men.
On this monument are the names of 224 men from Reading, Ohio, who served in World War I, 10 of whom lost their lives in the cause.
The soldiers that came from Reading, they came in through New York and all the way to Reading. Every city they passed through, they had parades for them. Reading built that monument after the war in less than 3 months.
Their Roth father and a grandfather and great-grandfather were the people that designed the monument, had it built.
The legacy of the Roth family, that really goes to show you the meaning of those men that left. The brothers, cousins, neighbors that left, that went to fight war, that didn't want anybody to step on our land.
All 4 of the sons were actually in World War I.
For the Roth family, it goes deep. They're red, white, and blue. Right? They are red, white, and blue.
So this book is so complete, and I want to compliment Richard and Cindy Roth, who worked on this for not just days and weeks and months, 18 months.
And they did an enormous amount of research on this project, resulting in that 564-page book.
After 100 years, to have the opportunity to look back and to see what our legacy, these men did.
you're loved, you're treasured, you're remembered, you're part of a big family in Reading.
A lot of families that were involved with Reading remain in Reading.
Well, I still get goosebumps when they watch. That's the 3rd time I think I've seen it. So thank you for coming tonight, Josh, and thank you for playing that, Keith. And I hope everyone gets a chance to see it either during the premiere or go to your website or our website. It'll be also on our website and get a chance to watch it.
We'll be sure to get everybody that information. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you, Josh.
Go Blue Devils.
How long, Josh, does it actually run?
Oh, that's a great question, Mr. Gers. Thank you. It is a half-hour documentary.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah.
It'll be 6 o'clock, 6:30 documentary, and then we'll have a little break, and then we'll go to the football game.
Yep.
That'd be excellent. Anybody else have any questions? That was a good one, Tony. Thanks. All right.
I got that from the safety tractor.
Do what?
Never mind.
Well, thank you guys. Have a great night.
Okay, you too, Josh.
Thank you.
There are no minutes to approve this week. I'm going to get out all the minutes for the next meeting. Audience participation. I don't believe anyone has signed in to participate. Reading of any communications? No communications this evening. I will go to the council committee reports. Finance Chairman, Mr. Gertz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was joking about my crazy email that you and Mr. Fishesser was having so much fun with. And I'm, Siri doesn't listen to me like many women don't like to listen to me, I guess. I'm sorry I put that out that way, but I have to compliment Carla. She figured it out pretty easily. So it was kind of a puzzle trick. Thank you, Carla. But what I want to report on tonight, there's a few things. First of all, I want to bring up the fact that we lost one of our former city employees, Mr. Robert Short. I don't know if how many of you knew him personally, but Bob worked for the city for many years. He had contracted some other illness that he was dealing with, and I'll be darned if he didn't slip in the bath and broke his hip about a week ago or two, and unfortunately he had to go in the hospital and have be operated on, and the operation did not go well, and so on this past Saturday the 3rd, Bob passed away. We send our sympathy to his daughter Rachel and Mike, his two children, and keep them in your prayer, all of you, if you will. Digressing a bit back to what I was trying to refer to in my email I sent out, I think it's imperative, maybe some don't think it's important, that we do have this ordinance that exists for us to know what being, to be properly engaged, I believe, by what's going on in the administration and so forth. There is this ordinance. It actually, someone said it went back to the time of Bud Emlinger. Bud followed it quite accurately and perfectly, I think. But it really went back farther, I think, back into the time when Mr. Sherman was here. It was an ordinance passed so that anything over $5,000 that the council would be informed of what it was being spent upon. And of course, there are certain funds that most of you should be aware of that no money can be spent out of them without an ordinance of council. And as a part of the finance committee, and I think any member of council, now some may think it's unnecessary and unimportant, but there is a requirement that anything spent over $5,000 and out of any fund be reported. And there was the sum, I think it was $6,200 or $6,500 spent on this study of the zoning code. I do have a copy of the changes of that related to that zoning code, but you may say, well, why do we care? Or why is it important? Well, there has been some recent history over the last few years of where money was. One prime example was a community development block grant that took place when we were going to redo the bathrooms down at Cannick Park. And money was taken from a road fund, which was totally inappropriate, and spent for architecture and redoing these bathrooms, because apparently the money in the community development block grant was about $175,000, something like that. Didn't provide for that type of expense, and rather than go and seek money from the capital fund and get approval, the safety director, service director, didn't see fit, and we had to later on go back and correct that by separate ordinances to move the money from the capital fund back to the road fund to compensate for that. Now, is that a great problem with some people? Maybe not, but with dealing with 30 some funds, I think it's important that we make appropriate measures in dealing with properly spending money from various and appropriate accounts. And the similar thing that occurred recently that even when we talk about the Doughboy, which I'm very happy, I believe that most of that money came from a grant from Duke Energy. I don't know the amount though exactly, and money was taken from various grants and put into the FEMA fund, which most of you know is Federal Emergency Management Fund for flood control, doing studies in that area. It has nothing to do with the Doughboy or any other kind of programs. I think even there's money was a grant for a recreation study by a committee. And we have not, as a council, to my knowledge, really seen how the money has been spent, how it's being used. I know they hired some people to do it. Maybe I'm a stickler, maybe the rest some aren't, but I think that it behooves us to make sure that we are spending money from appropriate accounts and various funds. And I know Sabrina's doing an excellent job keeping track of it, but recently I think they had moved some monies from the FEMA fund and put them into other areas that really don't relate to FEMA. They were grants for other purposes. And I think we need to eventually get an accounting to those things. So I regret that, when I put the message out on the media to everyone that as I said, I did it quickly. I don't want to start being a complainer. I've been extremely busy and I'm happy with our practice, and I didn't double check it. So, but there were only two people that really couldn't figure it out, I guess. I know Carla figured it out. I appreciate that, Carla. You realized the tractor was director. So anyway, my point is I think that, and I appreciate Don Lindeman. He called me. I said, I didn't quite understand it all. He did it on the phone. He didn't do it out in a public meeting, but that's whatever anybody wants to do for however they want to attack or consider the problem. I still want to try to see if we can get back to having meetings in our proper public forum. And I think it would make it easier for us to have a more energetic and involved finance committee meeting too. I'd like to have one. We have to let people know when we're having committee meetings so that the public can participate in them, just like we do with council meetings. So my goal, hopefully, is that council will start to consider doing such a thing, and I may go ahead and do it as a committee meeting and do a publication so that we can keep proper distancing. I guess now it's out to 16 feet. That's the latest I'm hearing. So whatever the requirements are, I know that they have mayor's courts and things like that take place, and they're capable of handling them and making sure they happen. The football games, they allow people to attend the football games. I know it's limited. My grandson plays for Reading. I hope that they do better on Saturday night, but they've been having their problems. But I do like to enjoy going and watch them. I have other students that I taught years ago at St. Pierre and Paul Academy playing on the team, both of the Bemis twins, for instance, and others. So, but they have events that are in the public forum, and hopefully we can get back to that. I do have several other things I want to cover tonight, hopefully, but I was hoping that the safety service director would be here and would be able to give me some information, because I think they're critical issues that I'd like to cross. I'll still bring them up later in the meeting. That's all I have directly on finance at this time. If anybody has any questions, criticisms, or complaints or sarcasms, it's fine.
Tony, you can have a committee meeting. I've had a committee meeting already.
Yeah, I know. But you had it in the caucus room, and I don't know. I believe you had it in the caucus room. I wasn't there, and I don't know whether there's enough room in the caucus room to maintain proper distancing according to the governor's standards. But I will explore that. But I'd rather have it so that I guess this is fine. People can enjoy it, but I think it's better if we can get back to our original forum.
The one comment about the zoning, did they know ahead of time that the study was going to run over 5,000, or was that like an open study and then that became the number?
I guess you'd have to talk to the people who were hiring them to do the study. It doesn't take anybody I would hire to do something. I would want to get a pretty accurate estimate of what it's going to cost.
There may have been an estimate, and it may have ran over.
Well, regardless,
sounds like they covered a lot of things.
Regardless, that's a whole nother issue. I want to talk about that, but regardless, I mean, at the point in time when it appeared that it was going to go beyond that, the ordinance isn't complicated. It's not difficult. There's a Exhibit A, and it keeps us, I think, engaged in as a council of what's going on, rather than every couple of weeks we sit here and basically vote for ordinances. We may not be totally maybe some are informed on it. Maybe I'm in a different position or perspective, but I think it's better if we have greater communication.
It's just that you seem to be thinking it was a malicious attempt to bypass council, and there may be other circumstances, and that's not how it started. So I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, yes, we should be following this. But like you said, if that's how you want to attack, then I guess that's what you wanted to do tonight. So,
Well, first of all, you made two comments. I'm not attacking anybody, and you're saying it was malicious. It was not malicious. I think it was careless, because previous service directors had no problem abiding by sending out communications, and I resent your assumption. You know how you spell assumption, don't you? So I resent your assumption of what my intentions are and what my goals are and how I deal with what I am and my commission.
you know, it comes from a repeated pattern, Tony.
Well, Mr. Nesbitt, I don't agree with you. I've heard you speak up and you make your comments and you have responses. I think maybe you ought to get back to your
I have a responsibility for a civilized meeting, Tony, and I'm just trying to get it to that.
Well, it's to conduct the meeting, not to participate in discussions necessarily what goes on in the body of the council. That's your job, to conduct the meetings and to vote when there are tie votes, which you try to recuse yourself from those, which
you try to make sure nobody from council wants to step up and say anything to you. But if that's what you want, and if that's the rest of council's choice, I'm not going to say much anymore either.
Okay, that's fine. You can take whatever.
That's fine.
Position you want, Mr. Nesbitt.
I kind of like to get back to the meeting, actually.
Well, I'd like to get back to the meeting too. So what do you want to do now? Proceed.
Any other questions for Mr. Gertz?
I do.
Go ahead.
The important question, Tony, where do we go from here? What do you want to see happen?
What I'd like to see happen is the administration, or at least the safety service director, conduct himself according to the ordinances that we have, and see to it that the proper communications are made with council and let us know what's going on. I don't, maybe certain ones do. I don't know. Maybe he talks to you in more detail. I don't get a lot of communication of what's happening with this recreation committee that's come about. I have really little or no knowledge about how this whole thing came down about the zoning code. I'm not sure that the hearing took place correctly. There was some research done. There was no public hearing that we can find, although apparently he said he had conducted a public hearing before the planning commission. I think matters have been brought before council now concerning that issue where we spent $6,500 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And I'm not sure procedurally it's correct. I mean, sometimes it would be valuable if we would be able to communicate as it's unfolding. I'd like to see what publications the notice was put out. There is a section in our code that requires the planning commission notify the public. I mean, we have many other things that are put on our website, but I don't believe anything was put out there about a public meeting that was to be had with the planning commission. Now it's before council, and we're supposed to have set a hearing. I don't know if that's occurred. We're supposed to do that, I think, within Dave can correct me, I think 30 days from having it submitted to the council, but I don't know we've done that yet. So there's a lot.
Stand by on that.
I don't think
I can clear some of this up. I talked to Patrick today, and as far as the public hearing, he had sent the notice to the Enquirer. The Enquirer did not put it out in time, in the timely fashion it had to be, so they had to cancel the public hearing, and he's got to start all back over again.
Back at the planning commission?
Yes.
You got to go back to
planning.
Well, that's
as far as the Bud Light letter, he did not know about the Bud Light letter at the time when he did this. He didn't know about it until I talked to him about it. So it was nothing to try to get around council or anything else. It was just a thing they were moving forward. You know, these were changes in the zoning code that probably should have taken place years ago, but never got around to it. So what were some of the other questions you had?
What changes in the zoning code are you talking about? It should have happened years ago. I
can answer that. These are things that when I was on the zoning board that we had talked about for a few years, changing the easement for garages, because pretty much save for a few properties in Reading, no one can build a garage without having to go through the Board of Zoning Appeals. Setback on fences. parking spaces for new businesses. There was quite a few, and a lot of these were addressed in what was sent.
Height of fences.
Well,
Yes, and the height.
also, I haven't read it in its complete form, but there are things that I don't think I would agree with. I think all utilities should be underground. They're already making exceptions for that, and I think that might jeopardize some other issues that we're having at the current time. I'm glad to hear that it's going back to the Planning Commission, that they are going to have and follow proper procedures. You know, he's been the service director for about, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years. I mean, you should know these things if you're serving in that capacity. And by the way, we casually called it a Bud Light letter because Bud followed the rules. It wasn't instituted during the time that he was the service director. It went back farther than that, to the time that Mr. Sherman was here, and previous administration, similar things were happening where we weren't getting communication, and that was what was needed to get to be able to get people to become more appropriate in their participation of how things were going to unfold, rather than just coming in here with an ordinance a day before council like we have concerning the one tonight. I'm glad we don't have enough members. I don't know exactly what the TIF is all about. I think it would be better if the economic development director and the service director would have come in and talk to us in more detail about what that's going to be. And I'm kind of going into these areas that's going to be for us tonight. I don't know, Dave, you had something you were going to say? I interjected, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Dave, did you want to say something?
Dave
No.
Powell? Yes.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead,
All right.
Dave. Mr. Powell, you go ahead. You're on mute right now. Okay.
No. No, I didn't have anything further.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Gertz, for your committee report. Utilities, Lands and Buildings Chairman, he's not here. Zoning, Planning and Environment Chairman, Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Chris. Is it my understanding from Randy then that it's going back to the Planning Commission then?
Yeah, what happened was, and he's got the timestamp that he had sent for a public notice for a public hearing. The Enquirer did not put it in the paper in time for when the public hearing was going to be had, so to give the public enough time. So now he has to go back because of the time spans. He's got to start all the way back at the beginning again.
Okay.
So yes, it's going to be what it sounds like is it's going to be a formality passing by the zoning board of appeals or whoever's doing this, and then he'll start the process over again of trying to get the public hearing in the time frame that it's supposed to be in. It's not a thing that he didn't do it right the first time. It's that the Enquirer dropped the ball.
Gotcha.
So I believe there was some research. I don't think it ever showed up in the Enquirer. I mean, I can double check that, but we did do some analysis, and I don't believe it ever showed up in the Enquirer at all.
Well, it sounds like the issue has been handled, and it's going to go proper. So, as far as the report, I was going to talk about us scheduling the public hearing, but since the Planning Commission hasn't actually officially approved it with the proper meeting, I don't think we need to schedule a public hearing at this time. But I did want to talk to Katie and Tom about having a committee meeting to go over the zone changes, when you guys may be available to do that, and then also with the social distancing, what the logistics of that might look like. Would you guys be comfortable having it in chambers, or would we want to try and do it over Zoom? Or, I wanted to hear from you too.
Either way works for me. I mean, we can wear masks during the meeting if that works. If we have it in chambers, I'm fine with that. I would prefer to wear a mask if I was there.
I am also comfortable with having them in chambers if we wear a mask.
Okay, why don't we plan on doing that? My calendar pretty much is open in October with the exception of Wednesday the 14th. What are you guys looking like?
Well, Wednesdays are always rough, so Wednesday nights are not good for me.
Okay, could we maybe shoot for maybe Tuesday the 13th, a week from today, down in Chambers?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, what time would you like to meet? 7 o'clock or 6:30 or?
Hey, Dave,
Yes,
I do know that Patrick is going to request from the mayor a meeting next week for council so that we can get the one ordinance that we have, or no, I'm sorry, the resolution passed.
okay.
Does Thursday work better then? Thursday the 15th?
Actually, I have a prior commitment that evening. I just remembered.
I am also out of town on the 15th.
Let's see.
Well, now we're getting into where we're going to have our next regularly scheduled meeting. So why don't we go ahead and maybe carry this over to the next regularly scheduled meeting on the 20th?
Okay. Does the Monday the 19th work? We can get it
Yeah,
in.
I could do it Monday the 19th.
Work? What time?
Okay, Monday the 19th at 6:30.
Okay.
Okay, this will be a public announcement. There's going to be a Planning, Zoning, and Environment Committee meeting on Monday, October 19th at 6:30 p.m. in the council chambers. So I would love to have any public involvement. It is a public committee and the public is welcome. That's all that I have, Chris.
Okay, any questions? Any other things for Mr. Powell? Thank you, Mr. Powell. Laws and Contracts Chairwoman, Ms. Edichico.
Thanks, Chris. All I have really is just to see if anyone has any questions about the document that I sent out before our last meeting on September 26th. It's the one that the Chief of Public Works signed off on. Didn't really have time for discussion after my last report, so I wanted to see if anyone had any questions or comments, if you had a chance to look it over or anything. And other than that, that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, then I guess there's no questions. I think we heard about that before, so just good to see the paperwork, I guess. Thank you, Ms. Edichico. Public Health and Safety Chairman, Mr. Fischescher.
Thank you, Chris. For the month of September, the police department had 1,223 calls for service, 51 auto accidents, 206 total charges filed, with 142 of those being original charges. Citations issued, there were 29 to Arlington Heights Court, 4 to Hamilton County Court, 3 to the Juvenile Court, and 180 to the Reading Mayor's Court, for a total of 216 citations. As far as operations for the past 2 weeks, they have a couple of thefts that they're investigating. 2 people were charged with disorderly conduct after overdose runs. They were able to de-escalate a situation with an armed suicidal subject, disarming him, and were able to transport him down to UC for some help. Also, they had a recovery of drugs and a loaded firearm during a routine traffic stop. The new cruisers are in and are awaiting striping and equipment installation. Finally, for the police, I'd like to congratulate Officer Chesney and his wife Robin on the birth of their baby boy. For the fire department, for the month of September, they had 185 EMS runs, 31 fire runs, 7 of which were all calls, for a total response of 216 calls. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. The American Cancer Society encourages all women to perform self-breast examinations on a monthly basis, and women over 40 to have a mammogram annually. Early detection is the key to overcoming the devastation of breast cancer. According to the American Cancer Society, when breast cancer is detected early and in the localized stage, the 5-year relative survival rate is 99%. And that's all I have for my report this evening. Chris, I do have one thing for later on the other business.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Fishesher? Thank you, Mr.
I
Fish.
have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Dave.
I had a constituent ask me, Randy, if the monthly police department report was something that could be emailed.
To public?
Yes.
I don't know that he wants to do that because it's all encased in like giving addresses and things like that. So it's really Dave, I don't know, you could maybe help me on this, Stevenson. You know, I don't think that it's meant for public eyes. You know, the total runs, I could probably put those out, or they could be, I mean, they're going to be in the council reports. You know, they'll be in my committee report on a monthly basis. But as far as the individual, when I talk about different runs in the operations where they had, you know, theft calls, disorderly conducts, there's domestics, those have addresses attached to them. And I would not feel comfortable putting them out to the general public.
Okay.
Is this something that at the end of the month we could update on the website? Just like the total runs and whatnot?
I'd have to ask Patrick
Like on a spreadsheet?
if our guy could do it, the webpage guy, because evidently we've got somebody hired now that does all the updating.
Yeah. Name's Blake. Okay. I'll go ahead and talk to Blake next time about possibly doing that. And he could pull numbers from your reports, Randy.
Yeah, you could do that, or I could email. Let me talk to Brian and see how comfortable he is with it.
What?
Okay. Yeah, and then get back to me, and I'll check on including that somehow on the website. What he'll allow us to do.
Look, the problem with putting all of that stuff into an email is that some of it is public record and some of it is not. You're going to have to go through every single run to redact all the stuff that's not public record before you put it in an email and send it out.
Right.
There are a lot of things that simply go into those reports that are clearly public, and some of them are not. You're asking the department to spend an awful lot of time redacting stuff. And every time there's a fire run that goes to the same address because they're transporting somebody or giving them treatment, all of that stuff has to be redacted as well. If what you're looking for are raw numbers, I think Randy gets those, and that's stuff that could be put on the website and or emailed to whoever.
Yeah, and that's all we're looking for, I think.
Of emailing individual runs to a particular address, especially if no charges result, I think that's a problem.
Right.
Agreed. I think Randy.
Yeah, I have no problem with the total runs report that I give. And I'm sure that, and again, I'll check with Brian, but I'm sure he doesn't either.
Well, that's
but I was more
check with
concerned about the operations.
Okay. Thank you for your report, Mr. Fishesher, and I'll note that you have something else later. Recreation Chairman, Mr. Lynn.
Thank you very much. It was brought to my attention that the VYO basketball youth program will only permit 2 parents or 2 guardians or 2 adults in with each kid to watch a game for the VYO youth basketball. So I would highly encourage VYO to contact ICRC to see if they could film some of the games. Those games that I go to, I know that there's a lot of family involvement, and I'd hate to see that kind of end. I understand the COVID restrictions and understand what they're doing. So I'm just trying to think out of the box and maybe get ICRC involved. So I would ask the administration, VYO, to maybe contact ICRC and then maybe even post the links on our webpage in Reading so they can watch these games, because a lot of them don't have the cable channels to watch them. So there's just something I would like to the administration to look into, possibly contact VYO to get to happen. I know that we pay ICRC a lot of money to do things like this, and I think this is something right up the wheelhouse that can get done. So it's something I'm interested in. I think that it should be looked at. Other than that, Halloween's still on for the 31st. Those who do not feel comfortable because of COVID, just don't participate. That's fine. It's understandable. But my understanding is in Reading on the 31st, there will be Halloween. So that's all I have to report.
Okay. Is the time 6 to 8? Is that correct? For Halloween?
6 to 8 o'clock. Okay.
Is that what I'm not sure. Is that what it is, Tom?
I think so, but I would have to double check that also.
Okay. I like your idea of using ICRC. You're right. We pay the money and it should be used.
Yeah, and my understanding was that the city doesn't have to go through council or even the administration to request these types of things. So maybe connecting, the CYO with ICRC is all we have to do, and then they can follow schedules and do all that without us. And Keith, can you confirm that if that's true? I'll check that with Jason and report next time.
Yep, just get in contact with Jason, and he can talk you through that process.
Okay, I'll take care of that, and then we can let the rest of the organizations in the city know that they can go directly or they have to go through us. I'm pretty sure they can go direct. All right. Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Any new business that needs to be put into a committee or anything that come up? Randy or Tony, any of your stuff that's
go ahead, Randy.
New business?
Go ahead, Randy.
Well, I think Randy's is just business at the end of the meeting. This is just for new business to talk about city business. It's not like, personal or what your kids are doing. But if we don't have any, I'll go to the next.
I'd be here all night. With kids. No, I do have a couple of things I wanted to go. We did talk about the zoning code update, and I'm glad to hear they're going back to the planning commission. And I think that's the proper thing to do. But I am concerned too. I believe, and I may be remiss in not having this and look into it more detail. But and I compliment Don Lindeman in working on the bench that he reviewed that, and we've had films on it, and I'm hoping that that's going to serve. But that's that's very small improvement compared to what we need to do to have flood remediation for the people in my ward. But I believe in 2017, flood remediation was one of the primary things we talked about on the next cycle of the community development block grants. But I haven't heard anything about any proposals or whether there's any engineering things going on or what we must do or what's going to happen with, I guess Mr. Ross is not going to be here to discuss this, but where do we stand with community development block grants currently? I'm concerned if it was 2017, it's a 3-year cycle and we were going to spend it in the last year, which would be 2020. And I haven't, and maybe somebody else can shed light. Maybe you're more knowledgeable. Some of you have a closer communication in these areas than I do. But I'm concerned that if it is 2020, we're in October. I don't know, if you don't spend it, you lose it. And I would like to know if we are in that cycle, or if, you know, the last community development block grant problems, we've had a couple of them over the last few years. One was we were going to build John's at Canning Park. Then we ended up with Big Toys because it wasn't proceeded in the correct way. And then we ended up, which worked out well for the purchase of the old Roth service station that some were saying it should have been torn down, made a parking lot, but I'm glad we have a viable business there. But that was like a last minute thing where we bought that before we were going to lose the cash. And it concerns me. If maybe somebody can shed some light on it if they're knowledgeable about it. I don't know anything what's going on with it. I believe that there are issues that we need to get into rapidly about that. Has anybody shed any light on the community development block grant money, where it's at, or do we have another year, or do we know anything about it?
Nope.
Well, I guess that means a nope. So if someone would communicate with the safety service director, and maybe we can get an update, or the economic development director, I'd be helpful. So that was one thing. Another thing, I would like to look into it. I'm on this new program. I'm trying to lose more weight again, 4th time. So I did walk Thornridge Drive one evening from Balser to Furman, across and back down. And I have a client or two that actually live on Thornridge who have different views on what should be done. And I know this has been thrown out there, and the administration's put a letter out and talked to some people on Thornridge. Denny sent us all a letter. I talked to him casually about it. And I know there are people who have mixed emotions about it. And but the curves on Thornridge Drive are not in very bad shape at all. I casually ran into the Chief of Public Works, and I talked to him. I had to call him on an issue about my garbage collection, and I know many people. I talked to Dave Stevenson, and he's of the opinion the street needs to be widened and all that. But I think it would behoove us, before we make any final judgments, we're going to spend $2 million on a project and remove all the trees that some of the residents don't want removed. I looked at that too. I won't name names, but about 30 years ago, there were 2 individuals in the community who went out and they got this Tree USA thing, and they put trees up and down Thornridge that were people with frontages. I think they're 60-foot frontages, 50-foot frontages, have 2 trees in the parkway area. And some of them were wise enough, they've already taken them down because it tears up the sidewalks. But, you know, thinning of the trees would be logical to me. There's some trees there that probably have a good 30-inch in diameter trunk, and they're causing troubles, not to the curbs, but more to the sidewalks. But I think it would be helpful if we could have a public meeting of some sort, invite the residents down, let them air it out. I know I'm not comfortable just arbitrarily voting on this project with the kind of money that's involved. I don't have any problem helping the people on Thornridge. And the irony of Thornridge Drive, when I was mayor and at Mayor's Court, people who were speeding on Thornridge Drive were not out-of-town residents. There were people trying to get from home across Thornridge Drive on the other side of the hilltop, or vice versa. I don't know what it is today, Dave. You'd have to explain it. But most of the people who were speeding on Thornridge Drive were Reading residents, and ironically, and to me, I think it ought to be analyzed a little more carefully before we leap into doing this. I know it came up as a project, and then, but we've never had any real interplay or involvement with the engineers who planned the project. Now, I'm going to pick on engineers, I guess, but they pick on lawyers and doctors and everything else. But the bigger the project, the bigger the cut that goes to the engineers too. You know, if it's a $2 million project, they'll make more money than if it's a $500,000 project. And I'm not saying that that's what they're doing, but I think it would help us to make it a better opportunity to make a more intelligent judgment if we can at least let the people. If nobody shows up, then apparently nobody cares, you know. But if there is a group that want to come in, now how we do it, I guess, is going to be tricky again with the COVID. But you know, I guess you could do it at the stadium. You could do it at the field house. You could do possibly, I guess, if it's you get a nice Sunday afternoon before it gets too cold, in one of the parks, and people could sit, you know, 6 to 16 feet apart. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I'm not comfortable in voting for something unless I think that the residents have a greater opportunity to participate. Now, there are, that's Thornridge. I talked about a few of these. I would like to get a report on this recreation committee and when they've met last and what they're talking about, and what the future plans that they're proposing. And I'd like to see an opportunity, maybe they could come to council and present it to us, and or at least some representatives of that group, and let us know what their thoughts are about where we go. We do have a recreation committee on council. I think Tom does an excellent job, but it would be helpful if we knew what the heck they're doing. And of course, I'd like to know if there's any possibility of bringing the members of the school board down. They're talking about putting a ballpark up at the Hilltop school property. A little research that I found, I think they owe about $1.5 million on that property, and they got $950,000 in the bank. And so and then they're maybe going to come back and ask for an increase in the levy. I'd like to know what they're proposing. Is it going to be something that's going to be lighted? I don't think the residents that live around there, I know that happened at Moeller over in Kenwood. They never did end up with a lighted football field because the residents weren't happy with it. So I don't know if somebody, Mrs. Etta I seem to have a good rapport with the school board. Maybe she can invite them down and enlighten at least council or as to, and we can be more involved in what's transpiring, what their goals are, what their plans are, and whether or not it even meets all of our proper zoning. And I know that Canning Park, there were professional baseball players could play there, and they had no problem with going forward and making a success out of their life if money were put into there rather than spending, money where they already. I mean, it is the citizens who have to pay these debts on these properties, and at least I hope we'll have a better participation in the judgments that's going to happen. I know this is a private thing for me. I've talked to Tom Harsh. I don't know if any of you know, but I'd like to see what that we pushed to get the sign on. I saw it on the history thing here that we had for the Doughboy. They started out showing the lighted, or they showed the sign, welcome to Reading, welcome to Laughlin, and it goes back many years, but that has the ability to be lighted, and I would like to see whatever committee would want to explore that to see how we could approach that. The Kiwanis has a solar operation of a sign that apparently isn't too expensive because I believe members of the Kiwanis installed it themselves. I know we were told it was going to be a very expensive proposition. I casually talked to Tom Harsh about maybe it'll look terrible lighted. I don't know, but he said he could put a temporary system in. I wish somebody that has those kind of connections with the service department, the service director, and the mayor, maybe they could take a look at it and see what it would look like. And I know it's a private thing with me because I was my dad actually was born and raised in Laughlin. He's not on the Doughboy because he was a First World War veteran from Laughlin, so he's on over at their recognition at their memorial. But I want to keep the good rapport that Reading and Laughlin has. I know I'm running through these pretty quickly, but I'd like to throw them out there because I think it's important that we as members of council, don't just sit on our laurels from week to week and vote on ordinances that maybe we don't even know a whole lot about. I mean, this TIF proposal, I'd like to know more about that before I'd even vote on it. It just was thrown at us yesterday. I'm very excited that if there's something going to happen up at on the PNC property, but I would like the service director to give us a lot more detail. Maybe he could give us a written report to all of us before it comes up for final vote. Because the TIF not only affects our city revenues, it also affects the school's revenue, and I believe they have to participate in the approval of a TIF. That's and I think it involves primarily infrastructure, ingress and egress roads, so forth. So I'd like to see us be able to have a greater participation and understanding rather than just have an ordinance put on the floor that we have to act upon. And I was going to ask him too about the resolution tonight. if you did look at it, I believe we're projected to get 308,000. I think that's more than we were projected to or received last year. I'm not positive of that, but maybe Sabrina, you could check that for me. I apologize for not getting to you today sooner, but I think that's going to be projected more than what we took last year. If you don't mind helping me out and later in the week, I'd appreciate it. And then maybe we could talk about it before do we have to suspend the rules? I don't know. Maybe we do for a resolution for that of that nature. I guess Dave can tell us when we get to it. And then, of course, the other obvious thing that strikes me is people have been asking me in my ward over and over what's going to happen to the central school property. I find it hard to believe that the school board has no knowledge of what they may want to do with that at some point in time. So again, even if it's in a private type of a meeting of some sort, I think it behooves us to find out what's going to be in the minds of the school boards of what they anticipate is going to happen to the central school property. You know, I have my personal views of what I'd like to see happen, and I'm sure each one of us sitting here probably are the same. And there are probably as many people in the neighborhoods and so forth down there have the same ideas that they'd like to know what's going to happen with that property. It affects not only my constituents, but my office is not only located pretty close to it, I live pretty close to it. So I'm told, I don't know if it's accurate, I don't have any problem with people wanting to improve their living standards, but I don't want to see some multifamily low-income type of structures be built in that facility or that area. I'd like to see something that's going to complement the property values for people so that we can grow, you know. And you know, rather than take up all the time, I think Randy has some things I probably could go on with a couple others. But, you know, by the way, he's not here, the safety service director, but I do want to compliment him. So I don't want to be a slap hand, but the pole in front of, I'm dating myself for all of the old Schmidt's Meats. Now it's the cake store that's there on Jefferson Avenue is gone. Had no luck. There are other poles in that general vicinity that ought to be examined and that could clean up the electric, the overhead electrical lines and change things around. But I do want to think that is accomplished. Very small thing, but it was important. I thought, I think it made the city look ridiculous to have a pole with nothing on it for numerous years. So thank you, Mr. Ross, wherever you are. It's like Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are, I want to thank you. So that's all I have.
With all the stuff that you mentioned, I know that there's a lot of discussion you had there, but to be able to do anything with this, I would like to get a referral to one of the committees that you think any of this should be assigned to, and allow council to go ahead and assign by majority vote that activity to that committee.
Well, personally, I would like to go back to meeting every Tuesday night. I think many of these are things that require all of us to participate in, not individual 3 or 4 people in a committee.
More hours aren't going to cover it. We need it assigned to a committee.
Well, if you let me finish, that's your view. I don't have any problem having other meetings. I know people get upset, but you know, it wouldn't bother me to meet on a Saturday morning if we were going to cover one topic, and meet on another Saturday morning to cover another topic as all members of council and get the input of everybody on some of these issues. Now, then again, you know, when you have a committee meeting, I remember when Tim Cox was on council, we were going back and forth about the contract with the school. At the end of the day, he was like, you become like an errand boy, and the council has to make the decision. And you have certain critical things that come up. It's frustrating when you have a committee meeting, all 3 members may vote in one way, and then it gets on the floor, and you have just as many people who may have a different perspective on the issue. And so how you want to attack it, I'm not going to argue with you, but my opinion would be that all members of council ought to participate in some of these issues. Certainly, I think an opportunity to, even if it's in executive session of some sort with the members of the school board or all of the school board, we can go up there, they can come down here and find out what are the goals for I cannot believe when you have spent $53 million on a new school and you pour all these properties, the land down, and you have no idea what you're going to do with them. I mean, somebody has to have some ideas of where they want to go with them. I know the ball field, but
I can answer the central question, is that in the last e-news that was sent out by the school, it's a newsletter, everybody can go to the school's website and sign up for it and receive it monthly, that as of right now, the plan for Central will be green space. They're going to seed it. You keep bringing up low income housing, but that's never once been mentioned by the school, or I don't know where that came from, but as far as I know, the only thing they've ever said they're doing with it is keeping it as green space right now.
okay, well, I don't want to see it permanently as green space, frankly, but maybe others do. I mean, that's my.
Well, I don't think that's permanent, but.
Well, then well, anyway, the other issue you raised that it's low-income housing, I have a lot of people asking that question, and I know it's part of the national discussion in the presidential campaign. There's some apparently, I can't quote them, but there are apparently some federal laws that can allow methods that would require cities that may not, such as Reading, that may not want to. I did forget one. I'm going to bring it up again. Other things that they can that they can be required to allow things to happen where people living in other parts of the general metropolitan area you could be required to open up your land so that they can be developed for that kind of use. Now, I don't know any of the requirements. I'd like to know what they are. I'd like to have somebody, maybe we'll get our state senators, state representatives to come in and tell us in more detail, but I'm concerned about it. Your mom ought to be concerned about it. It's right across the street from where she lives. But the last thing I did forget, we talked about the Doughboy and our history and all the things that are going on about Reading. And I know all of us, we may have different opinions, and it was worse years ago, not worse. So we had two strong political parties in town. We had lots of arguments, but one thing we always did agree upon is the history and the value and and with Jim Lichtenberg and members of the people of the Historical Society about where Reading was formed, where it came out, and how there are many places in Reading that are named Reading throughout the United States with different spellings. When we talk about Abraham Voorhees founding a town, it's named after Reading, England. And now we're talking about in the city of Cincinnati, changing Reading Road to President Barack Obama Boulevard all the way out to Galbraith Road. We've got that. First of all, they can't go to Galbraith Road because that's in Reading and that part of it. I personally do not agree with it. And I don't have anything against Barack Obama or any of the rest of them, but the historical value of how these, you had Harrison Avenue because they took you out to Harrison. You had Hamilton Avenue because it took you out to Hamilton. You had Reading Road because years ago it went to Reading. And so that's another issue I think that we ought to at least be prepared to respond to, because I'm sure I'll probably be listed as a racist now. I mean, every time you say anything that's negative about an issue, you're a racist or something else. But I do not agree with changing the name of Reading Road runs all the way out into Sharonville and Evendale and north. So I do not like hearing that, but of course I can't change what Cincinnati wants to do, but I am certainly not prepared to support changing it through the city of Reading or that down there where it's at. We're trying to work. Was pointed out to me that we have the Sycamore Township, we have the city of Cincinnati. People don't know this, I don't think. And Reading, from about Sunnybrook Drive, a little south of there on the east side of the road, it's all Reading, and on the west side of the road, it's Cincinnati and Sycamore Township. So how it can be arbitrarily changed the name of it all the way out through there, I think is rather presumptuous of the city council, the city of Cincinnati. So that's another one I forgot to add. I have a few more.
Anyone else want to make any comments about this part of the meeting, the new business? I mean, a lot of discussion, but again, there's no committees, no assignments, and frankly, just saying that all council members should attack every one of these issues is probably not a realistic action plan. Reports of officials.
Yeah, that's
Law
true.
Director, Mr. Stevenson.
Thanks, Chris. I don't have any formal report tonight. I want to address a couple things. First of all, when Tony talks about the Bud letter, he's correct. That does go back to Frank Sherman, but the reason it's called the Bud letter is because Bud was the finance chairman at the time, and the letters went to him. It was a mechanism by which the administration, believe it or not, we were in more precarious times at that point than we are today, even though we had some money that eventually got spent on other things. The bottom line is things were pretty tight, and that was the purpose of the letter. Secondly, with respect to the Planning Commission public hearing, the notification did not go in the Inquirer, it went in the community press. The community press is now doing an ad sharing through Cincinnati.com with the Inquirer, and that's where the ad appeared, and it did not appear within the 20 days before the public hearing. Other than that, I will say that I did notice Mr. Gertz's father prominently displayed on the wall there when we were talking about the doughboy. Yeah, I'm a history nut. And for his grandkids to be only 2 generations removed from World War I, to me, is amazing. I've got some family stories like that too that I'll be happy to tell you another time. But that's all I have tonight. Thanks.
If I have a quick question, as far as notifying public about meetings and having to send it to the Inquirer, does posting on the city's Facebook page, would that count as public notification?
Typically, for most of the public notices that we do, the Facebook page would be in addition to a newspaper of general circulation. The community press, there were 2 different editions that this particular notice went in. Those are considered newspapers of general circulation in the city of Reading. The reason we don't publish in the Inquirer, quite frankly, is because they're 20 times more expensive than putting it in the community press. But no, those things, electronic versions like on our Facebook page or on our website, unless it's specifically mentioned in the statutes that you can do that, you have to put it in a newspaper in general circulation.
I was just wondering about the reach on that, because I don't know how many people check that or.
It's the same with bids, and we bid these projects, and you always wonder how anybody finds out about it when they go in these small little newspapers, but they sure do. So that's it was a law that was intended to protect newspaper circulation back in the day, and it's probably outlived its usefulness. Mm-hmm. But it's still there.
Right. Thanks.
Hey, Dave. In addition to putting in the community press, I wasn't aware of that. There's nothing to prevent the administration from putting it on Facebook or on the ICRC's or.
And I think that's the question that Katie was asking indirectly, and I agree with you that I think those things would be good ideas in terms of trying to get it out. But the requirement still is generally a newspaper of general circulation.
Well, I won't say which. I was dealing with a case one time, and they had to have a board of directors meeting at a certain institution, and they would put it only in the court index, because who gets the court index, other than lawyers and collection people and so forth. They didn't want people to know when the board of directors were meeting.
Well, and the Court Index Press is a law journal, and a lot of public notices go in there for that very reason, because those are also considered newspapers of general circulation.
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Mr. Gertz did send in a financial update. I'm surely not going to try to do what he does with that document, but he does include it in an email, so I'll read that. He says, "Hello everyone. I will not be at the meeting tonight. Today is the first day of early voting at the BOE Board of Elections, and we were very busy. I'm working late. However, I have attached a copy of the income tax receipt summary for September. We are $106,130 behind for the month of September compared to last year, and are running $194,284 behind year to date as compared to last year. Month to date for October, we have collected 48,122 and are running about 31,000 ahead. Any questions, please send to my cell phone. So that's from Mr. Gertz. And then there was also an email that was sent by Mr. Ross. It's really not a report, it's an introduction to what we want to talk about in the executive session, so I'll hold that until then. I'd like to go ahead and go to the auditor, Ms. Smith.
Thanks, Chris. I just wanted to give a couple updates, and I also have some community updates at the end of the meeting. I wanted to let everyone know that it's already October, so that means I'm thinking about next year. So we're getting things marked off for our year end with all the department heads. Working with all of them, the Treasurer's Department and administration, to prepare. Hopefully this will give us a smooth transition into 2021. We closed down purchasing except for emergencies on December 4th, and that way we have enough time to get the reappropriations to you guys like by the end of the year and get everything settled up. And then I wanted to let everyone know, as last week the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation has announced that we'll receive a 2019 premium refund, which will amount to about $170,000, which is just shy of a payroll. Those are all my updates for tonight, Chris.
Okay, any questions from anyone? Thank you, Ms. Smith. We will go to the reading of our first resolution.
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
It'll be a first reading, and we'll go ahead and read our ordinance.
An ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to engage with Dinsmore and Scholl LLP for the purposes of special counsel with regards to pending future tax increment financing legislation and declaring an emergency.
And with that, it'll be also a first reading tonight. I would like to go ahead and go to other business before we go into executive session. So does anybody have any other business? Mr. Fischescher, I think you had some.
Yeah, Chris, mine's very brief. I would like to thank the American Legion Post 69 and Reading Eagles Auxiliary 1095. Both of them donated to the police department for their Shop with a Cop program. This will assist them in continuing to do some special things for the kids in our community. So a shout out to both those organizations for their donations.
Very good. Mr. Gertz, did you have something?
I went through all of mine. I can't think of any, but Randy, because how does individuals contribute to that? Is there a particular officer that handles that?
Just check to the police chief. I think it's made out. You'd have to ask him to be sure. I think it's made out.
Yeah.
Reading Police Shop with a Cop.
Yeah, I'll find it.
I have a couple updates, Chris. The farmers market will continue at the intersection of Reading and Vine Street through October 30th. There's a survey floating around online to ask for suggestions for next year's farmers market. If you need me to send you the link, you can always call me, or I know it's been put on Facebook. My phone number here at the city is 513-733-4879. We've also had a couple of work days with groups from MND and Moeller students that have gone very well. So thank you to our service department and everybody else that's been helping with those projects. They've done some painting projects around the city as well as some litter cleanup. So It's really nice to get the students out, get them involved, be safely socially distanced, and give some love to our parks. So those are the only updates for me, Chris. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have any other business? Then I'd like to get a motion and a second for going to executive session.
Make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
What's the purpose?
I'll have to read Mr. Let's see.
The purpose, the meeting, for the purpose of negotiations and personnel
Yeah, with the fire department.
and police.
Anyone want to make that motion? I think Mr. Fischesser made the motion. Anyone else? Motion made by Mr. Fischesser, seconded by Ms. Chico to go to executive session for the discussion of the topics that Randy just mentioned. I'll take a roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Fischesser,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
Then we will go to, that motion passed, we'll go to executive session at, what time? 8:47. I know Carla has to leave, so Carla, have a good evening.
And
I will take care of the rest of the meeting from here.
Thank you.
and Chris, I'm not going to stick around for this either.
Sure, that's fine. I think Miss Smith has already left also. Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Just a reminder, everyone to shut off their microphones on this page.
Right. And then dial in.
Hey, Katie, you're not on if you're looking for our meeting. I'm trying to get her on the other one. You're muted Katie, you're on the regular meeting, not on the executive session.
All right, how do I get over to the executive session?
Go to the email that Chris sent right before our meeting started and click on that. It's on my phone.
Yeah, Miss Edichico, if you can dial in from your phone, or and that way you can stay on this meeting on mute, or you can get out of this meeting and use your computer to get into the new one and then come back to this one afterwards.
Okay, I got it now. Maybe.
I'm back.
I'm back.
Tony's back. Literally.
Yeah, you're looking at my back. You're right. The other day I might have, well, never mind. We have a young lady there. There you are. You get to see my fat face. Hey, you might be seeing less of me though, Randy. That may make you
Yeah.
happy. I'm on this new program. Got to lose 80 pounds. Maybe I'll get with Jerry Epstein, start playing ball again. Oh, so Katie, we take on Mariemont Saturday.
Yes. Yep.
Wasn't that the team we just went up on them 14-0 and lost it in the end? Is that right?
Yeah. I can't remember the exact score now after all the football games, but yeah, in like the last few seconds of the game.
Yeah, we lost by 2 points, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know how they let him throw that touchdown. We were up, but we were up by a point, actually. Oh, well.
Can I now get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we return from executive session.
Second.
Well, there was 3 of you that did the second. Motion made by Mr. Fisher, seconded by Ms. Edichico to return from executive session. Roll call. Mr. Powell.
Yes.
Mr. Let's see who would be next. Mr. Tom.
Yes.
Mr. Lynn. Mr. Gertz, I'm sorry. Mr. Fisher.
Yes.
And Ms. Edichico.
Yes.
Okay, unanimous. We are returned from executive session at 9:14. All we have is adjournment. Does anyone else have anything to say before we adjourn?
God rest Eddie Van Halen. I enjoyed his music.
Yeah, I saw that today. Cancer. You know what he had? What cancer?
Throat cancer.
Throat cancer.
Too much smoking. All right. Hey, have a good 2 weeks, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Good night.
Night.
Well, see ya.